Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to do another genre recommendation for you. So this one we're going to be focusing on fantasy. I know that not everyone is fantasy readers. I understand that. So this is very niche for people who do enjoy fantasy, or maybe if you are thinking about getting into fantasy, I think some of these could be good introductions to the fantasy genre. I definitely think that. And I will go ahead and put a disclaimer on this one first. I do love fantasy books, but I am not widely read in the genre yet. I still feel like a little bit of a noob. I feel like I have read some popular ones, and a lot of these are popular books, but that's what has gotten me to pick up the genre. So you're probably going to hear about a lot of books you've already heard about. But these are ones that I have read and just personally absolutely loved. They've been favorites of the year for me for a lot of them. And some of them are favorites of all time. Some of them are favorite authors of all time for me now. And these books just really got me into the genre. And I still feel like I'm dipping my toe in a little bit. I might have a whole foot. We'll see. But I'm not super widely read. I don't read nothing but fantasy. I can't give you 10 recommendations for young adult because I don't know that I've read 10 young adult fantasy books. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and say that. So I think these are going to be pretty popular books that you're going to hear about, but these are definitely ones that I have read and absolutely loved and recommend all the time if people ask me for fantasy recommendations. And I think it's because a lot of these books will appeal to a lot of different people. Even if you're not a fantasy reader, it could still appeal to you. And a lot of them are written in a very approachable way. And they're not intimidating. They're not overly complicated. They're just fun, adventurous, full of magic, and I've loved them. Okay, so let's start with middle grade. The first one I want to recommend is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This was one of my favorite books of last year. Oh man. Okay, so this follows a young girl named Amari, and her brother has disappeared, her older brother. No one knows where he went, just completely disappeared. There's no trace of him, no contact, nothing. And that's very unlike him. So her family is very concerned about this, obviously. Amari comes home and gets a very strange message that there is something in her brother's closet that she needs to go and look at because it's for her. So she goes into his closet, she finds this suitcase, and it contains an invitation with her name on it to a special meeting to be considered to be inducted into this magical society. Amari has no clue what's going on because this is not a world where it is known that magic is a thing. So she has no clue what this is about, what it means, anything like that. But she knows that it's connected to her brother. So she wants to go and try to find him. That's her main mission, is to find her brother. So she goes and she finds out that there's a whole magical society and there's a whole magical dimension that she was not aware of, and that her brother was a part of it. And so she's going to use this opportunity to get into the society in order to try to find her brother and bring him home. And it goes from there. You guys, this book was full of twists I was not expecting. And there's politics mixed in there, and there's a lot of privilege mixed in there, which was really interesting. And it was so good, you guys. And the magic was so creative, and I couldn't put it down. I flew through it. I cannot wait for the next installation that comes out. I think in August now. It keeps getting pushed back. So I think it comes out end of August as of right this second. But oh man, I was completely entertained the entire time, and I loved B.B. Alston's writing, and I'm totally in for this series. The next one I want to recommend is The Keeper of the Lost Cities. This is by Shannon Messenger. Again, another series starter. This is a long series. I believe there's going to be 10 books total. And this one follows a young girl named Sophie, and she also finds out that magic is real, and there's a whole nother realm that she wasn't aware of, and that she is a part of it. She plays a big part in this world, actually, that she just wasn't aware of because she was living with her parents, thinking everything was normal. She's a regular human girl. Nope, she's not. And she finds out exactly what she is and what she's meant for. by discovering this magical realm. And so you see her try to acclimate to this new place, these new people, this new school. She's not always welcome everywhere. And so you see her struggle with that. And I was completely just blown away by the first book. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really creative. And Shannon Messenger's writing, she wrote this in a way that really made me care about all the characters, even the side characters, because they were all made to be important. And yeah, so it's not all about Sophie. There's other characters there too, and they play important roles, and you start to care about them as well. So I really liked that. It's kind of like an all-encompassing thing. And I cannot wait to read book 2. It's actually sitting over here, right there, looking at me for middle grade March. So hopefully I can get to book 2 in the month of March. But yeah, I'm like all in on this series. I'm really excited about it. And then the last one for middle grade is actually a book series I'm currently reading right now. I'm reading book number 3, but that is The Land of Stories by Chris Colfer. And this one follows a set of twins, and they grew up reading this book called The Land of Stories. So it's fairy tales, basically. And so they're reading all these fairy tales like, Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella and Snow White and Rapunzel and just all these fairy tales that we have all grown up, either reading or watching. And one day they make a discovery that they can actually travel into the book and they can be in this world of fairy tales. And it's a whole thing. So all these fairy tales are living together. They live in different kingdoms and they're all in the same area. And the twins realize that not everything's super happy. There's wars, there's kingdoms, there's politics, there's rulers, there's people who want to take it over. There's dangerous parts in the forests that are really dangerous. Wolves will eat you. It's this whole thing, and they run into all these characters that we know and love. Red Riding Hood is a big one, and she is fantastic. And there's Goldilocks and Jack and the Beanstalk and just all these things. And I love this series. I'm only on book 3. Like I said, there's 6 books total. My daughter has read all of them and loves them. I will say, of the 3 that I'm recommending, this one reads a little bit more on the younger side as far as the writing goes. The writing's a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more straightforward in the writing, but the stories and the way that they unfold and the things that happen are really creative. Mother Goose. Oh my gosh, you guys, if you know, you know. And just, I thought it was really creative. But I'm going to say it's not super incredible writing, if you will. But the stories make up for that, so it doesn't really matter. I still really enjoy them. And I really like what Chris Colfer does with these fairy tale characters. I think it was just really great. So definitely recommend for me if you like middle grade, for sure. I think it's a series that you should read. And again, it reads a little bit on the younger side, but just they're fun. They're so much fun. Okay, let's get into some young adult. So the first one I want to recommend is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is a duology. There's 2 books. And okay, I absolutely love this duology. This one follows a young man. His name is Laszlo. And he lives in this world where there was a kingdom or a city that was kind of forgotten about over the years. And it was supposed to be this completely magical, amazing place to be. However, over the years, it's kind of almost become a myth, and they call it the Lost City. And it becomes kind of almost a sad story, what happened to the city, or, just sad that no one remembers it or no one knows where it is or anything like that. And then he is a librarian. So he is working one day, and this big group of people come into his town, and it's kind of a big deal. No one knows who these people are. Laszlo realizes he knows exactly who they are because they are from this lost city that he is obsessed with. And he actually ends up getting on to this crew that is going to find and revamp the city. And he manages to get on the crew to go do that. So you follow his adventures with them, finding the city, what happened to the city, what's going on. He meets all these people. And You guys, the writing, this is one that has incredible writing. Laini Taylor has beautiful, beautiful writing. It is lyrical. I don't usually go for lyrical writing, to be honest with you. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much for me, but this one just completely worked. And it was just something that was beautifully told. I could vividly see everything that was happening in it. And it was very atmospheric. The way that it was written, I felt like I was there. There was this really cool thing about dreams that was just amazing. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was definitely just a complete fantasy read, and you just get completely transported there. So definitely a high recommend for me. Okay, so this next one is interesting because I've only read the first book, and I haven't read the follow-up yet, and there's supposed to be a third one as well. And I've only read the first one, but it was so amazing. So that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I loved this book. I read this book so quickly and just remember being completely obsessed with it when I was reading it. So this follows a young girl, and she lives in a world where magic has been banned. Basically, you can't use magic at all in this kingdom that she lives in. And she is part of a group of people who used to survive on magic, that was their livelihood, that they were able to practice magic and use it in good positive ways, and they can't do that now. And if you are caught doing it, you could be killed. She comes from a line of people who were very powerful and who had strong use of their magic. And it's almost to a point now where they believe the magic is just gone because it's been banned. Like, you can't even practice it anymore. And if you could, wouldn't even know how to use it because it's been gone for so long. And she realizes she can use it. So that's a problem. She has to keep that secret. And at the same time, you are following the king of this kingdom and his family and what's going on. And a lot of really bad things are happening under this man's rule. And it completely starts a war. And so you're seeing, both sides of that. She's teaming up with some people that are really interesting to try to bring the magic back because that's what her and her people want. So, yeah, you're following all of that. And gosh, it was so fast paced. I really like the twists and turns in it for sure. And the magic was definitely unique and fun and interesting. And another one that was written to the point where I felt like I was there. I could easily see everything. And, I read this book a few years ago, but I still remember like everything that happened in this book because it just ingrained itself in me. So I love that one. And another young adult, that is another situation where the writing just really transported me, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. And this one follows a young girl and her sister, and they've always wanted to go to this Caraval event, which is kind of like a traveling carnival, if you will. And it's very hard to get in. You have to have a ticket. You have to be invited, like all that type of stuff. And the way you can get invited is number one, you have to have money. And number two, if you don't have money, you have to get an invitation somehow. So you kind of have to beg and plead your case. So they spend a lot of time begging and pleading their case over the years, and they finally get an invite. And so it's coming near them, and the girls basically run away from home in order to go to this event. And the event is interesting in that it puts on a show. It puts on this thing where it's not a murder mystery, but it's like a mystery where that you have to solve it. And you can either be a player, so you can be part of it. You can be part of trying to put together clues and try to find things, almost like a scavenger hunt type thing. Or you can be an observer where you're just watching everyone else do it. So it's either or. And of course, the girls want to be part of it. So it's all fun and games until one of the sisters goes missing, legitimately inside. And so the other one is trying to figure out where she is, what happened to her, and it becomes a matter of life or death for her. And the interesting thing about this is that it is a magical carnival. So you're with her and not knowing what's real and what's not, because there are things that are happening around her that she's like, oh, could this be a thing? And then it turns out it's something completely different because it was magic. And so you don't know who to trust. You don't know who is who. You don't know what's real and what's not, what's an illusion, like all these different types of things. And just, it was so it was written so descriptively that I could easily picture everything that was happening. I felt like this should be a Tim Burton movie. Like it had that kind of feeling for it in a lot of the different scenes, and just I could easily picture it on a big screen. So I loved it. This one is a trilogy. I loved all three books, and just it was a lot of fun. Okay, adult books. Are we ready? All right. The first one, oh gosh, interestingly enough, these are all first books in a series, and I've only read the first book in all of these series, but I'm recommending them because I love them so much. This is tying into why I'm doing my series in the spotlight. Just saying. Okay, so the first one is Malice by John Gwynne. I read this book, oh gosh, was it last year? Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year, like early last year I read it. I loved this book. Okay, so this follows a young boy, and this is kind of, okay, so it's fantasy, right? It's not real things. It almost feels a little bit medieval though, if you will, like kind of that time period, like there's no technology, anything like that. So he is living in this village, and there are a lot of prophecies happening as well. And a lot of the prophecies are kind of confusing, like they can be construed different ways, and there are people who are trying to construe them in ways that will benefit them versus what they actually mean. And so there's a lot of confusion around the prophecies that are happening in this kingdom. And so we're following this young boy, and he is dealing with hardships, not only within his own family, but with like people around him. You know, he's being severely bullied and all that by some other boys and stuff. And he's also learning how to fight. He's learning how to wield a sword. He's learning, you know, how to do certain things. And so you see him kind of struggling along with a lot of these different things at the same time. So he has got a lot on his shoulders. He ends up getting an animal companion that I would live and die for. I love her so much. And so you see him bond with this animal, and that is completely incredible. And it's also something that's very scary for people around him for certain reasons. And so that's really interesting. I really like that. It's hard for me to talk about this book because it's just, it was written so incredibly. And you're just kind of along for the ride for most of it. So it's hard for me to even like give a good synopsis. I don't even know how to describe it, but there's war scenes in here that are just like, whoa, edge of your seat, like, holy crap, this is happening type stuff. There were parts that made me go, whoa, in it as well. And I couldn't get enough of it. I really couldn't. I absolutely love this book. It's a big chunker of a book, and I flew through it. There's multiple battle scenes, definitely. There's, you know, some raids happening on different kingdoms and stuff, so you follow along with that. And a lot of power struggles as well. You know, people wanting to take over other kingdoms and just wanting all the power and, you know, political or actual power. So that's definitely happening as well. And yeah, so I know that I did not do a good job explaining this book, but it's one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. And I definitely want to read the rest of the series. Again, don't know why I haven't, but yeah, it's a high recommend for me, even though I'm doing it zero justice. Okay, the next one's going to be a little bit for a certain audience. So I'm going to say Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. This is the first book in a trilogy. Again, I've only read Nevernight, but you have to be okay with brutality, because this one definitely is bloody and brutal, and it does not shy away from violence and things like that. So warning going into that. So this follows a young girl named Mia. She has decided that she wants to get revenge for the death of her father, which was carried out by the government, and he was wrongfully murdered, basically, and she wants to take revenge for that. So she decides to infiltrate the army and let them train her, and then she is going to turn around and get her vengeance back on them. And so you follow her going through the process of learning to become a soldier and doing all these things and learning some magic and, you know, all that stuff. And okay. The interesting thing about this too is that the way he writes this is interesting. There's a lot of footnotes, which threw me off in the beginning, but I ended up loving them. Some of them are long, some of them are short, some of them are important, some of them are not, some of them are funny. That just made me chuckle along the way. And so I ended up really liking that aspect of it. Not everybody does. So I will say that. But I loved Mia as a character. There's another character in this one that just, he has my whole heart. And again, it's another one that I've only read the first book. Why haven't I read the other two? I don't know. But I definitely want some more Mia Corvera in my life. So I definitely want to do more. But this definitely has something where, like, if you like watching characters learn to do things and like training and, you know, like almost like an academy type thing, this could definitely be a one that I think you would like. Okay, and the last one for the adult. And this is one that I always recommend if you are fairly new to the fantasy genre and you want to read like an epic high fantasy, but you're a little bit intimidated. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This one got me into the fantasy genre. I will say that. You could argue that Harry Potter was, because obviously Harry Potter is fantasy and I read those, you know, when they were coming out. But I didn't move on from Harry Potter just wanting to read nothing but fantasy and get into the genre. It took me a lot longer to actually want to get into the genre of fantasy and reading some more epic high fantasy. It took me years and years, like maybe a decade before I was ready to do that. So I'm not going to say that Harry Potter got me into the fantasy genre. I'm going to say Mistborn got me into the fantasy genre because this is an epic high fantasy and it's completely approachable. The magic system in here is so unique. It is incredible. And it's written in a way that I could understand it. And I was fairly new to the fantasy genre. I hadn't really read that many, especially adult epic high fantasies. And so I was a little bit intimidated going into this one, but I found myself just completely immersed. I understood everything. Brandon Sanderson has a way of writing the smallest little details that help make sense of everything. Like, just, it makes things click for me. And you know, I was sitting there reading something and I'm like, but, okay, got it. Like, you know, like I would start to question some things and then it was like, oh, there it is. Like he told me what it meant. Okay, good. So I will say that about Brandon Sanderson's writing. That's why I love his writing so much. He's one of my favorite authors. So this is one that I always talk about. So this follows a girl named Vin, and she is basically living on the streets. The world is really kind of almost in a dystopian type of situation where the villains, like there's already been a war. Okay, so like a war is already done and the villains have won and they are in power over this kingdom or realm or whatever it is. And so you're seeing the people who live there trying to survive because they're not being taken care of. They are not given opportunities. They are made to be slaves, basically. You're either a slave to them or you are on the run, trying to run away from them. So Vin is on the run, and she ends up kind of joining a little bit of a gang who is trying to like rise up and create a rebellion against these guys and take them down and out of power so that they're not going to have to live in this situation anymore. So that's the premise basically of the book. And the magic system, like I said, is so unique and so cool and just made so much sense, even though it's completely made up and didn't make any sense at all, but it made so much sense. And I just absolutely loved it. I loved his writing. I loved the characters. I can't believe I haven't continued with this series coming up. Seriously, like for real, that one has been one that's been calling to me. And yeah, so whenever people ask me for adult high fantasy recommendations, I always recommend Mistborn if they haven't read it yet, because I think it's a good introduction. And yes, I saw Brandon Sanderson's video. Yes, I jumped on board. Like I couldn't do it fast enough. Yes, that is happening. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to leave his announcement video down below, but he basically broke the internet and he's doing something absolutely incredible. My jaw was on the floor. I cannot believe that like he, number one, did this, and number two, like drop this bomb on everybody and everyone's freaking out, including myself. And I 100% jumped on board. Okay, guys, those are some of my fantasy recommendations. Again, these are very popular books, so I know, but that's what I've read and that's what I've loved. I'm definitely wanting to read some different fantasy books as well. I have an entire shelf downstairs full of nothing but fantasy. So, that's a genre that I want to get much, much more into, and reading some different authors and different worlds and getting into that. But these are definitely ones that I have read and loved and will talk about forever. I hope that was helpful to some of you. I know that fantasy is not a genre that everybody reads or enjoys, and I completely understand that. But those are the ones that I would 100% recommend to everybody. All right, hope you guys have a great day. Let me know if you guys have some favorite fantasy books that I didn't talk about. Please let me know, because I'm definitely looking to get more into the genre. So let me know your recommendations down below. I would love to hear them, and I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.